How's it brewing, everyone? Coffee Bean with Yu-Gi-Oh! Master Duel, but slightly different from my typical format when I do play Yu-Gi-Oh! This isn't necessarily what I was going for when I built this deck, but I found out that it keeps forcing my opponents into these I'm out situations because Yu-Gi-Oh! Players don't read, and this deck honestly makes them have to read to really work around it. And yeah, let's just go ahead and jump into, actually first I want to show you what they're playing. So not anything that's, all that flashy, so to speak. It's not really anything like meta type or whatnot, but it can be a sort of, not floodgate, but there's just Rika can definitely work off of almost next to nothing. Like, you notice how few monsters were in there, but there are a lot of things to negate. And then obviously Rika has a lot of spells and such that really get everything flowing. And if I don't speed this up, it's gonna take forever regardless, but even with this speed up, it's gonna take a while. So I had Alistair in here because he's pretty safe to play. Like, with, I think you only need like 4 or 5 cards in your regular deck to get a lot of the invoked monsters in with any kind of deck that you have. So he's kind of like a 1 card combo is what they call it. So I tossed him in there. Me starting with him probably wasn't the best call. I should have gone more for my the weather is the archetype, and I should have started setting that up sooner. But it did provide me the invoked monster. It only allows your opponent to use 1 effect of a monster per turn. So he did have to get a pretty big workaround to finally get around all of my 1 monster card, because Rika deals like such a little damage, which he could have punched it with his synchro summon monster, but even then he had put so much work at that point into just getting his monsters out onto the field, to where even if he had punched me at that point, he still lost a whole lot of resources, so it wouldn't be a OTK or anything. And yeah, I said that this would be kind of a weird video. I'm not really going super in depth in the battle, just because, if I'm being honest, I don't understand the entirety of the Rika deck. I just know that it works very heavily off of using your spells. You get 1 plant monster to summon out another plant monster to get a spell. You switch that spell out to summon another plant monster. And it's just kind of like, if you can't really get a lot of negates in there, it can be really tough. So in this sense, the weather archetype monsters didn't really play a huge role, except for the fact that they kept coming. Well, not even in that one, they didn't really keep coming back. Um, but the invoked monster put a sort of like a big pause into that play. And then the weather just kind of, it makes people uneasy because it's something that they haven't seen before. And yeah, moving on. Get through stuff. Oh wait, I forgot. I wanted to, well, I can do it after the fight. I want to show you guys the deck that they were playing so that you could, see what I was up against. But I might as well show you after, let it be more of a surprise. So I took Alistair out. I just felt like it wasn't working the way I wanted it to with the invoked monsters, and I put in Evil Twins. I think that the way that Evil Twins works, and they're kind of like another type of 1 card combo, I felt like that would incorporate better into my deck, because what I'm missing right now is punch power. I think my highest hitting monster gets up to 2400, and so most of your, heavy hitters are swinging at least 3000. And so I was like, okay, if I have Evil Twins, then, Trouble Sunny is 3,300. That's definitely going to be able to carry me. Unfortunately, at that point, I did get feather dusted, which took out some really good traps in my deck. But it wasn't completely over at that point. Maybe I should have kept Trouble Sunny longer and waited to knock out a different monster that they were summoning out. But this definitely put some time. It gave me time to work with whatever deck they were using because I've seen this before, but like I've never actually seen someone pull it off. I've seen I've seen people start the combo, but then I think they're just starting out and using that deck. And so as they start that combo, it kind of falls apart like midway because they misclick or like maybe they don't get they grab the wrong card or something like that. And so I was like, "Oh, okay. Well, let me see how this goes." And I'm gonna be okay. I'm gonna be honest. Like I felt like it was I felt like it was over. I'm gonna kind of fast forward this because they kept summoning and summoning, and at this point I was like, all right, well, this isn't so bad. But I can't remember the name of this. Assembled. I'm gonna go ahead and pause for a second. Assembled Nightingale can attack for each material that the card has. So that's 6,000 damage right there. And I kind of lucked out at the fact that I think I lucked out at the fact that they didn't use these. I'm pretty sure they could have used all the cards on their field, but I think they wanted to play it safe and have some defenses put up. Um, I definitely made some mistakes here, so I really expected to lose this fight. Um, I got rid of both of my Link monsters, and I brought out can't remember the name of this card. Kisikil and Lila. I just call them pink and blue most of the time. But I brought this card out and I realized, oh wait, if they flip this into attack, they can punch me and I lose. All battle damage you take from battles involving this XYZ summon card is also inflicted to your opponent. And so I was like, okay, well, that's it. I'm done. So I at that point I just went ahead and I threw my punches. I started to try to I could have put a different trap out that would have actually defended me, maybe. But at this point, I thought the fight was just over. So I was like, okay, whatever. I'll just kind of sit here and bide my time. And it's kind of funny at the fact that as I put these cards out, you can't see it because this is a replay. But in the actual fight, anytime I used a weather card, it would get back to them and they would just sit there. And I'm just like, I just special summoned it from like, being banished. I didn't think it was like that huge a deal, but they sat for like a minute. I think just reading over the one card. And so I think they just kind of got arrogant at this point because they definitely could have just punched me with the XY's summoned monsters that they already had, but they chose to go with like a bigger, flashier finish. And it was definitely like it wasn't a bad call by them, but I just barely was doing enough with my weather effects to where I was adding a little more time, and it was literally like that last card I used bought me the second I need it for them to run out of time. Like they had me on the ropes. And I think that's what's great about the weather is if your opponent has effects that they can put into play, they don't really expect your effects to keep popping up and for them to be like, hey, do you want to use this effect? Do you want to use that effect? So I think that was definitely happening with them from time to time where they were ready to be like, all right, I clicked the button, let's do it. And I would have an effect and I'd use it and it's like, hey, do you want to respond to this effect? And that would give me like 3, 4 seconds off of their clock. And I just ran their time by doing just simple stuff like that. If I'm being honest, I definitely want another chance to play the weather archetype and make a video about it, but specifically, I want to be able to use the weather link monsters. They have really unique effects. Well, unique to the archetype, or I guess unique. This is going to be really hard to explain. I just need you guys to like come back and watch the next video about the weather monsters. Anyway, I digress. We can even take a look at my own deck, where with the weather, a lot of their cards are just super rares, and I don't have a ultra rare from the weather in my regular deck. I do have ultra rare cards, but it's not part of this archetype. Which, as I was saying, it doesn't necessarily mean that you have a bad deck. It more implies the fact that you are going to have to add other things to it or incorporate different combos into your deck to really make it work. I will definitely continue to work on this deck as well as going back and revamping some of my older decks. But if you guys have any suggestions for lesser known card or archetypes that you'd want to see, go ahead and drop me a comment down below and I'll try my best to work on making a nothing over the top deck about it, but something that's kind of, like mediocre, that'll kind of get the ball rolling if you guys are interested in working with that archetype yourself. I don't want to make you guys a blueprint for a deck, and so I don't typically put in work to make it perfect, but I want to give you guys a good rough draft, because even this deck that I'm using, it could use a lot of work, but maybe I'll get around to actually making a all-out, like, this is to win deck at some point. But for now, I'm just focused on having fun with the game. I've spoken for way too long. I've been Coffee Bean, and I'll catch you baristas in the next one.